I'm Elizabeth Newsom and welcome to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be telling you about my favorite books I've read thus far in 2019. So typically I would put this as a wrap-up for January or February, but this list includes more than just what I've completed in January. It also includes some February books, and I'm grouping my favorite ones together just because I want to get it out of the way, and I don't want to talk about all the books I've read this year so far. So I'm just saving my favorites for you guys. So I have my top 3 favorite fiction and just 1 nonfiction because I've actually only completed 1 nonfiction this year, aside from the Communist Manifesto, and that was an interesting read, just not a huge fan of it. Anyhow, one of my favorite books that I completed this year is The Scarecrow King. So I've mentioned this book briefly before, but there's this kingdom where these people have magic, and those with brown hair have less magic or more worthless magic compared to those who have blonde or golden hair. So there's this one princess who's born with brown hair and the other princess is born with golden hair. And she's like this angelic daughter and everyone loves her, and she has this power that brings water up from the ground, which is really helpful for their kingdom because they don't have a lot of useful drinking water. This other girl, the brown-haired girl, whenever she pricks her finger and gets her blood on something, it makes it lucky. So it can do things like make torches burn longer, it could prevent glasses from breaking, a lot of little nifty things like that. Except this daughter is really spoiled and unlikable because the dad is kind of abusive, so she kind of does that to get attention. But even so, she is really selfish, like just genuinely selfish. Of course, you have to feel a bit sympathetic towards her considering her father and he hits her and things like that. But still, she's kind of a hard character to like. And what really makes this book worth reading is the love interest, because he is like amazing. So there's this ball and the father is trying to find someone to marry the princess off to. She doesn't want to have to leave her home, and she knows that her father is going to make her by putting her in an arranged marriage. So she completely insults every guy there and hopes she won't have to marry someone. Like, you could kind of see her reasoning, but of course she's really cruel about how she insults certain people, like, oh, you look like a pig, or you're really fat, etc. So then the father says he's going to marry her off to the next guy who comes along, and the next guy who comes along happens to be this poor minstrel, and he's not even good at singing. So they're married, and then they journey back to this other kingdom together where no one has magic, and along the way she learns a lot about him because he has some secrets that he doesn't tell her until the end. Actually, he doesn't ever really tell her. She just sort of figures it out. But along the way, her character develops a lot, and it's just like an adorable romance. Like, it's one of those romances where it's so sweet, it makes me cry. Like, literally. I'm, like, so pitiful when it comes to romance books. They're, like, my ultimate weakness. Which explains why my next 2 favorite books of this year were also romances. So there's Mark of the Raven, and it's in this world where there are these 5 main houses, and each house has a different type of power, and they're trying to unite together to fight off this empire who wants to take them down and destroy them all. And like I said, each house has a different type of power, so some have fire power, some have water, and then there's this one house that people don't think has a power because their true heir died off a while ago. But their power used to be they could enter dreams and they could dream walk, and they could either find out about that person, they could give that person courage, or they could even kill them by speeding up their heart so fast with a nightmare that they just died. But plot twist, this house still actually has its power, and it's united with the Empire to try and kill the people from the other houses. So the main character of this book is a daughter born to one of the dreamwalkers in that house. And the house is called Ravenwood, which is why the story is called Mark of the Raven. And this girl who has this dream-walking ability has this raven symbol across her back. So the other houses want to unite together against the Empire, so they all come to the House of Ravenwood to negotiate and discuss these things. And this daughter is told by her mother that she has to kill this one guy who's the lord of this house with water power. Except he's a really nice guy, and he's just really honorable, and he wants to do what's right. And she also finds herself really attracted to him. So it puts her in this really tough situation where she has to either kill this guy who's really good and she really likes, or she has to betray her house and her family. Honestly, sometimes the main character of this book was a little frustrating, like how she didn't stand up to her mother. But towards the end of the book, actually at the climax, is when she really kind of gets her own convictions and values. And I don't want to spoil anything. Actually, you know what? I am going to spoil it because it's not really a spoiler. But she decides it's wrong in the end. Again, I don't feel that's really a spoiler because if you read this whole book and she decides to go through with killing him anyway, that's not it's not really a good book. So I understand at the beginning of the book she has to go through this character growth and stuff, so of course she's kind of a weaker character at the beginning, but she just frustrated me sometimes. And with that said, it was an absolutely great book, again, one of my most favorite that I've read so far, and I'm so looking forward to the next book. So the main character isn't detestable or anything like that other main character from the Scarecrow King that I was talking about. So I am kind of sympathetic towards her, and again, like the Lord she falls in love with is super, super great. And also the world building and the whole powers and the ideas behind dreamwalking is just really fascinating. So overall, really enjoyed this book. And my last fiction book is Talon the Black by Addicted to Dragons, which is on WattPad. So honestly, this is a phenomenal book that I've read on WattPad. A lot of times I go on WattPad and I end up reading books that I would never pay money to read, but they're decent enough that they're somewhat amusing. Which sounds really bad, but it's true. This book, however, she actually has the ebook for sale on Amazon. I'm considering buying the ebook just to buy it, not necessarily to reread the story. But she's such a phenomenal writer, and right now she's working on another book on WattPad that's a continuation of this first book. So I'm not sure I can even explain it. It's like this epic fantasy, and it starts with this girl named Claire, and she's living with her parents right now, but her parents are on vacation. So she's graduated college, she has a major in political science, and she's really searching for a job right now. She's applied to this internship program to go to Washington, D.C., then she gets rejected. So overall, I think her circumstances are pretty relatable, especially for those who graduate right out of college and don't necessarily have a job, but they have a degree. I mean, I'm not at that stage quite yet, but I could definitely empathize with the main character's situation. And then this dragon comes falling out of the sky and lands in her cornfield. So when she goes to help him, it's actually this guy and not a dragon. So she stitches him up, and he wakes up and he's kind of weird. He has this like huge sword that's as tall as him. And he's also really strong and powerfully built. And eventually she learns he's from this other world and he came through a portal. And there are these things called the Vodar who are chasing him because he has these two powerful dragon stones. They can enable someone to control all the people who are half dragon, half human, called the Dranger. And he's one of the Dranger who's half dragon, half human. But when she finds him, he's wounded with this poison from a Vodar blade, and it's getting infected and black, and he's turning black all over, and his veins are turning black. And of course, the Vodar are hunting them down. So eventually she gets wrapped up in this thing where she has to face off with the Vodar. She gets taken to this fantasy world. And I won't tell you too much about the rest just because there's so many exciting things that happen in the beginning. And then, of course, there's this main dragon king of this other world called Talon the Black. Well, he's not really a dragon. He's a Dranger, so half human, half dragon. And the thing with each Dranger is they have someone who's destined to be their mate, but they can only tell when the person touches them in their dragon form. And he was in this battle where both his parents were killed, so he decided to face off this giant monster thing alone, and he got burns and scars on his face because of it. So overall, he looks pretty fearsome, and a lot of people are afraid of him, even though he's a pretty good guy overall. With that said, he can be kind of cruel and harsh at times. Part of that is because he has the curse of the black. So those who are black dragons tend to be haunted by this inner darkness, and they call it a curse because they can lose their anger more easily, or they have a tendency to go insane sometimes. So he kind of has this mental battle he's fighting as well. But anyway, he's never found his mate, and he's looking for this guard of his, who's the guard who fell into that girl's cornfield. Because this guard guy has gone missing, they don't know what's happened. And like I said, he doesn't have any mate yet, and I'm pretty sure his mate's going to be Claire. That's not a spoiler because I don't know it for sure, but with that said, I'm pretty sure. Overall, I just adored this book. I read it every opportunity I could. It's amazing. And right now I'm going through the second book. With that said, it's a really long book, which I liked, but there are so many POV switches. Like, I'm not interested in all the different characters who have a POV in this book. And a lot of times I just find myself skimming, like, okay, reading one sentence per paragraph, that happens, that happens, that happens, okay, I'm done with this section, and I can get on to a POV that I really care about. And of course, me being the spoiled romance reader that I am, I usually just cared about the POVs that involved a romantic relationship, and I cared about Claire since she's the main character. The other characters, I didn't really care about at all, and I was skimming as fast as I could, because I was like, hey, I have 10 minutes until class, I need to get through this and find a part I like. Again, very interesting book, fascinating world building, and I love to see the relationships develop among the characters and some of the romance. Right now, there's really not a lot of romance between Claire and the king, except where I'm reading, the king is starting to develop feelings for her and kind of this protectiveness. So I guess we'll see if anything more develops between them. Well, there you guys have my top 3 favorite fiction books for February and January. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe because I post one bookish video a week. Although sometimes it's related to something kind of college life, because right now I'm a college student. And in the comments, I'd like to tell me some of your favorite fantasy romances that you've been reading, because as you can tell, all 3 of those fall in this genre, and I'm kind of obsessed with that genre. So let me know down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!